Good evening, friends, and welcome to this press conference. The Central Statistics Office, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, has released the provisional estimates of national income for the financial year 2016-17 and quarterly estimates of gross domestic product for the fourth quarter, January-March of 2016-17, both at constant 2011-12 and current prices. We have with us Dr. T.C.A.Anant ji, Secretary, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, who will brief you on the subject. My warm welcome to you, sir. Also on the dais are ADG Shri Subroto Dar, DDG Srimati Rajeshwari. I welcome you both. Friends, as usual, kindly follow the points of order and keep your mobile phones in a switched off or silent mode. Over to Dr. Anant ji.
Well, thank you all for coming. I will, as usual, make some brief observations on the press release. The release has already been made, and I'm sure all of you by now would have got copies of it also with you. As you are aware, CSO has just released the provisional estimates of GDP and the Q4 estimates for 2016-17. One important characteristic of this particular release of GDP is that this has been compiled using the new series of Index of Industrial Production and the wholesale price indices. You are aware that when we had released the new series of GDP in 2015, at that stage itself, we had intimated that as and when IIP and WP are revised, those revisions will be incorporated into the GDP estimates. And this had also been stated in a revision policy document which had been uploaded at that time. Broadly speaking, the salient characteristics of the estimates which have been released today are that the provisional estimate for 2016-17 gives a growth rate of GDP at current prices of 11% and of GVA at 9.7%. In constant prices, these estimates are 7.1 and 6.6% respectively. If you recall our earlier advance estimate which we had given in the month of February along with the third quarter estimate, the constant price estimates were more or less the same. I will have some observations about this after I just give you the salient features of this estimate. So, the quarterly estimates of GDP at current prices show that the fourth quarter growth is at 12.5%, and this is much higher than the growth which was seen in the third quarter of 10.4%. Similarly, 11.3% in GVA, which is again higher than the third quarter growth in current prices of 9.4%. However, in constant prices, the growth rate in GDP is 6.1% and in GVA is 5.6%. Now, I think it's important for me to highlight certain characteristics of this release and the manner in which this has been compiled, because some of you prior to this release had been asking me these questions. So let me make those observations first, and I can give you more material as you in response to your questions. First of all, I think it's important to note that while we have incorporated IIP and WPI, their effect on the GDP is mediated through the manner in which these two indices are used in GDP compilation. IIP is used in GDP compilation in principally two major ways. Insofar as the annual estimates are concerned, IIP provides, first of all, a direct estimate of growth in the non-corporate side of manufacturing. In addition, it provides the indicators for some of the key inputs which are used as measurement of value added in certain segments of GDP calculation, for example, in construction. Further, IIP data, because it is available monthly, is used to quarterize annual estimates of GDP where quarterly figures are not available, and IIP growth rates are used in as inter alia as indicators in certain segments, certainly in manufacturing and construction. And of course, mining. Now, IIP estimates are, wherever relevant, replaced by more complete estimates for the segment from Annual Survey of Industries when that estimate becomes available. So the impact of IIP is only to the extent of non-corporate and for the years in which ASI is not available. Insofar as WPI is concerned, WPI is used in different compilation categories of GDP according to the segment in which the relevant WPI is related. So the manner in which WPI gets incorporated into GDP compilation is not the same weighting structure which is there in the WPI indices released publicly, but rather from a suitable aggregation from the appropriate compilation categories used as per the GDP compilation rule. The details are there in our document which we had released at the time of the new series, and you can see how the impact comes in. I think this salient characteristic of how WPI and IIP enter the GDP compilation must be kept in mind when you try to understand what the impact has been. The second point I would like to make is with regard to assessing the quarterly growth rate in any quarter, and particularly if the fourth quarter in recent time. I think it's important to keep in mind that, for example, the fourth quarter estimates in the current quarter are partly influenced by, in constant prices, by the growth of WPI, which has been seen. And if you look at the WPI series, which was released recently, the fourth quarter has seen a fairly sharp increase in WPI. This is in large measure due to the fact that commodity prices, which had been soft for most of 14-15 and 15-16, have now started hardening both domestically and internationally. This hard commodity prices have naturally shown up in WPI and therefore influence the GDP estimates at constant prices. Similarly, because of the relatively soft WPI numbers in the previous year, the fourth quarter estimates of GDP last year were much higher. If we keep these factors in mind, it provides a basis for keeping a sense of perspective on what the fourth quarter GDP numbers are revealing. I will stop here, but I'll be happy to give you more details in response to your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Let's start with you only. Yeah, 9, please.
Hello, sir. Shubham Batra from Cogensis. Sir, I just wanted to request if you could give us the data, the revised data for the earlier quarters of 16, 17, Q1, Q2, and Q3. We have for Q4 at 6.1, but what were the revisions in the earlier quarters, sir, on GDP?
If you notice the previous, the press release, we have given the estimates for 15, 16 and 16, 17. We will, I think we can upload them in the website because the press release has certain logical. Yeah, we'll do it in a day or so. We will be putting up the earlier numbers as well. Please understand, insofar as the method of compilation of the provisional estimate is concerned, the benchmark which is used is 15, 16. So all the information which you need to assess the 16, 17 number is captured in the 15, 16 numbers. But we will be giving the full details as well, but it will take some time after the press release. Thank you.
Yeah. Please ask your question. Hello? Yeah, 168 in there.
Yes, from Rajya Sabha TV. In many quarters it is being told that there is a jobless growth and employment is not increasing the way it should have. So how does this data correlate to this type of a statement?
See, as you are aware, GDP estimates by themselves do not provide an estimate of employment. I can separately respond to your query that National Sample Survey has recently launched a regular survey which will be doing labor force estimation annually for both urban and rural areas, as well as quarterly for urban areas, But the survey fieldwork has just started from the month of April. Estimates for this will only start becoming available in due course from sometime in 2018 onwards. As of now, the employment numbers which are available either through the annual survey of industries, which comes with its own production lag, or through the various reporting systems of the Ministry of Labour, which includes administrative data as well. I am not really in a position to compare these to GDP because these are reflecting different facets of the labour market, and without much more analysis, it would be difficult for me to say what exactly are those numbers talking about.
Yes, madam.
Hello, sir. Meghna Mittal from INS. The 2015-16 GDP has got revised to 8%, and as compared to that 7.1%, so this drastic fall. So how do you assess it in terms of demonetization?
Okay, I get your question. Let me, I have, even last time when people asked me about demonetization, I had pointed out that analysis of policies like demonetization cannot be done through simple, what is in technical jargon, economists sometimes use the argument post hoc ergo propter hoc type of reasoning, that because it is after this, therefore it is because of this. A policy impacts society through a variety of channels and through a variety of processes, and impact analysis of policy, in fact, is an extremely sophisticated field in econometrics. So I would caution against reading a single number which comes out after an event as being reflective of the consequences of the event.
सर माफ़ कीजिएगा, मैं वही सवाल दोबारा आपसे पूछा हूँ, क्योंकि फोर्थ क्वार्टर का जो मैं नंबर देख रहा हूँ उसमें काफ़ी ज़्यादा गिरावट है. कहाँ 8.7 था वो 5.6 पे है, और थर्ड क्वार्टर में भी. तो हम इसे क्यों न नोटबंदी से जोड़ करके देखें?
मैंने इसके लिए आपको इसलिए जब मैंने ओरिजिनल स्टेटमेंट अपना मेक करा था, बोला था कि फोर्थ क्वार्टर के नंबर को इंटरप्रेट करते समय 2-3 बिंदुओं पर ध्यान रखने की ज़रूरत है. सबसे पहले मैंने बिंदु WPI ग्रोथ का दिया था, और दूसरा बिंदु मैंने पिछले साल के क्वार्टरली ग्रोथ का दिया था. इन दोनों को मैंने इसलिए जिम्मेदार दी थी कि जो WPI ग्रोथ का फिनोमिनन है उसका रिलेशनशिप कई सारे फिनोमिनन से है, ना कि डिमोनेटाइजेशन से जुड़ा हुआ. तो एक हद तक तो कारण ये है. अब यदि इसको एक और तरह से देखें तो आप करंट क्वार्टर का ग्रोथ दूसरे पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से भी देख सकते हैं, क्वार्टर ऑन क्वार्टर बेसिस पे भी देख सकते हैं, और करंट प्राइसेस पे भी देख सकते हैं. इन सारों को आप जोड़ के देखेंगे तो आपको ये लगेगा कि इकोनॉमी में अभी भी बहुत सारा डायनेमिज्म है. डिमोनेटाइजेशन का क्या इम्पैक्ट हुआ, एक नंबर से जोड़ना और उसके साथ और कोई एनालिसिस नहीं करना मेरे लिए संभव नहीं है, क्योंकि मैं एनालिटिकल कंप्लीटनेस देखना चाहता हूं. सिंपल बिफोर एंड आफ्टर आर्गुमेंट्स में बिलीव नहीं करता.
Yes, madam.
Sir, Nikita from Cogensis. So I'm trying to compare, you had in the second advance estimate released in February, the GDP growth, it was 7.1%, and even despite incorporating the new data, now it's 7.1. So is it fair to say that there has been no change, or is this 7.1 because of the statistical bump up, and without that, would it have been a downward revision in the number?
See, it's there are many elements which go into the annual estimate, and one of the reasons why our annual figure doesn't change very much is partly what has changed since the third quarter. Let's take a look at them. One is the new WPI and IIP series. Insofar as they are concerned, the effect is somewhat muted, because as I told you then, and I tried to explain to people, that the manner in which IIP enters into GDP compilation and the way WPI enters into GDP compilation, the effect is somewhat muted. But some effect is there, and it is visible in the quarterly pattern which is visible between what we released in February and what we are releasing now. If you look at this quarterly pattern, in effect what has happened is the first quarter estimate has gone up significantly. The second and third quarter estimates are more or less at par. This is similar to the pattern which we are seeing in IIP, which shows that since the first quarter, that is from about the end of September, there has been a slight slowdown in the economy. So in effect, the overall estimate has remained the same. Our quarterly disposition has changed in part because of the new IIP numbers. And this quarterly disposition is in part the explanation for why the fourth quarter has come in lower and the first quarter has gone up a little higher. But the complexity in this is it's not therefore easy to relate it to single events, and that too events located in the second quarter, which many people are trying to do. It's probably reflective of a much more complex dynamic which has been governing the economy through these years.
So just one more question. Can we expect the GDP back series anytime soon now?
Last time also I had pointed out the difficulty of compiling the back series estimates, and the major challenge which I had pointed out then, and the answer remains the same, is of trying to project the data which we are now using on corporate accounts into the past, when we do not have similar sized company accounts data. And that is a difficult statistical challenge given the short period of time for which this comprehensive corporate database is available. So we are looking into the matter, and we will give you a clearer guidance once our analysis is complete. But at the moment, my answer still remains the same.
Yeah, Rahul.
Sir, beyond the complexities of statistical analysis, can I have a simple answer that all those complex dynamic elements which impact these kind of figures, among them, will you consider demonetization to be one of them?
Of course I would, but it's different from saying that it is a policy which is influencing the numbers by saying it is the cause of the number being the way it is. Yes, of course, one of them certainly. Every policy decision impacts the numbers, so will this impact the number. But the argument that the number has turned out, that the number is low, it is a consequence of the policy, those are statements which I would be much more cautious about making. Disentangling from a web of policies how a particular policy links to the phenomenon which we are seeing is a complex task. And it is easy to get misled in this sort of exercise if a simple before-after exercise is done.
Any more questions? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Then what should we understand from this data? For common public, if we go and tell them, then what should, it is creating hope or it is creating despair? And if hope, then in what way, despair in what way?
I think that's a fair question, and let me try to answer that. First of all, I think if you look at both the current year estimates and the time series estimates which have been released in 2011-12, it is clear that the economy is growing reasonably well. If you look at the figures which we have given post incorporation of WPI and IIP, the growth rate of the economy in 12-13 is now estimated at 5.5%. In 13-14, it was estimated at 6.4%. In 14-15, it is estimated at 7.5%. In 15-16, it is estimated at 8%. And in 16-17, it is now estimated at 7.1%. Now, if you look at these growth rates, these are relatively high growth rates. If you look at them from the perspective of what sort of growth rate do we desire over a long period of time, then at various places it has been stated that we need to achieve much higher levels of growth if we want to meet our development objectives. Now, from that perspective, there is still more progress to be attained. But from the perspective of are the growth satisfactory relative to our immediate past, the answer is they are improved. So I think there are two parts to the answer. We can take some measure of satisfaction from what has been achieved, but the numbers do reveal that there are a number of areas where improvement is still called for. Well, one of the areas was what I pointed out when we released the numbers last time. Capital formation continues to be relatively soft. The rate of capital formation is still below 30%. I think it is now 29 point something percent. And we would like to see capital formation rates well in excess of 30% to reflect the sort of long-term investment process which will drive the economy much faster.
So the question is addressed. This is regarding the per capita income, sir. The per capita income, you say that it's lower this year. In 2016-17, it's 5.7% as compared 6.8% of the previous year, sir. So this is page number 5, para 3, sir.
Insofar as per capita income growth is concerned, per capita income growth is principally driven from the same growth of national income divided by the population rate. So the population rate remaining the same, per capita income growth will naturally reflect the same pattern as you will see in the growth in national income.
Yeah.
Dr. Anant, this is about the impact of IIP on through non-corporate manufacturing. So that would be a proxy for the informal sector, is it?
Only partially. Non-corporate manufacturing can be both formal and informal. In fact, if you look at the annual survey of industries, the entire annual survey of industries segment is treated as formal, but not all of it is corporate. There is a very large segment which is non-corporate. IIP proxies for both this as well as the informal segment in manufacturing. Actually, in manufacturing, informal activity is relatively smaller proportion. Overall, non-corporate manufacturing is only 30%, and in that, informal manufacturing, that is non-ASI, non-corporate manufacturing is even smaller. The principal segments where informal activity is large, manufacturing is, I guess, about 15% or 20%. I don't have the exact details. We can look in the GDP release data from the past and figure this out, are in agriculture, construction, and trade.
Yeah.
Sir, you said that base revision of IIP and WPI have impacted quarter 1 and quarter 4. The most quarter 4, it shows a slower growth, and quarter 1 there has been a bump up. So the base revision, is WPI as a deflator more of a contributor, or IIP more of a contributor in a bump up, or in the fourth quarter for a slowdown?
I'm afraid that you're putting me in a spot. I don't really know the answer. I would hazard a guess that probably WPI plays a bigger role, because WPI shows a much sharper rise in the fourth quarter than the decline which we see in IIP over the 4 quarters. But that's I've not done a breakup of the components of this to be able to give you a more precise answer. This is a guess rather than a calculation.
Yes.
So Nikunj from Bloomberg Quint here. So how has the recent revision of IIP and WPI data altered our growth trajectory? And my second question is, will it be correct to say that that demonetization has had a significant spillover impact on Q4 GDP numbers?
Well, as far as the impact of IIP and WPI on the GDP calculation is concerned, if you look at the figures which we have given in the press release, we've given you a table which, in paragraph 3, which compares the old and new GDP estimates. The old ones are with 2004-05 WPI and IIP, and the new ones are with 2011-12 WPI and IIP. If you look at these two sets of numbers, you will find that the changes are small, but there is a certain pattern to them. In 12-13 and 13-14, there is a small decline in the GDP growth rates, both in current and constant prices. And in 14-15 and 15-16, there is a small rise in the GDP compilation. The sharpest rise is in 14-15, and a less sharp rise is in 15-16. Oh, I should point out a small typographical error in the table. I'm just seeing it as I'm staring at the table. And under constant prices, the year numbers have jumped in the middle. It should read as 15-16 should read as 14-15, and 16-17 should read as 15-16. No, you didn't. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, not in the printout I have, so maybe.
Okay, it's been changed.
Oh. Oh, I have an older version, sorry.
Okay, but it's
Yeah,
very
it
sharp.
has been corrected there, yes.
Very sharp of you to
Yeah,
notice that.
I was reading from an older version of the press note. Thank you.
So, yeah, demonetization.
Sorry, what was this? Demonetization, I've already responded to many of them. My personal assessment is that it is not so straightforward to link the third and fourth quarter growth figures to the demonetization exercise. I think there are some longer term structural trends which are present in the economy. These are revealed both in the patterns of growth in WPI and in the growth patterns of IIP. And if you look at these patterns, these are sustained patterns predating the demonetization event. Specifically in WPI, there is a systematic trend of hardening of commodity prices which has been visible throughout 16-17. In fact, from the last quarter of 15-16 onwards, the hardening of commodity prices becomes visible. This hardening plays a role in the GDP compilation. IIP figures, if you notice, do show that there is a certain softening in the industrial growth from the first quarter onwards. If you put both of these together, that's what I was talking about, longer run processes also underway. There are other dynamics which will need to be kept in mind.
Yes, I think.
सर मैं
that will be
लक्ष्मण
last
CNBC
question.
आवाज़ से नोटबंदी का कितना असर पड़ा इसका सवाल आपने बहुत सीधे तौर पर दिया नहीं क्योंकि आपका कहना है हमने आकलन किया नहीं। मेरा सवाल यह था कि नोटबंदी के बाद अलग अलग विद्वानों की तरफ से अर्थशास्त्रियों की तरफ से ये मुद्दा उठ रहा था कि वाकई इसका असर पड़ता है कि नहीं जीडीपी पे अर्थव्यवस्था पर। आपको नहीं लगता कि हमको अलग से इस बात का आकलन करना चाहिए कि इतना बड़ा ऐतिहासिक फैसला वाकई जीडीपी पर असर डाला या नहीं डाला?
ऐसा है, आकलन ज़रूर करना चाहिए, पर आकलन करने के लिए हमको टाइम सीरीज डेटा चाहिए होगा और जो इम्पैक्ट एनालिसिस का मेथडोलॉजी है वो लॉन्ग टर्म टाइम सीरीज के डेटा के साथ काम करता है, बोथ बिफोर एंड आफ्टर द इवेंट। और ये मैंने रिपीटेडली बोल रहा हूँ क्योंकि यहाँ पे मैं इकोनोमेट्रिक्स की क्लास नहीं लूँगा, इसलिए मैं इम्पैक्ट एनालिसिस पे लेक्चर नहीं लूँगा, बट मैं आपको टाइम सीरीज डेटा के साथ बता सकता हूँ कि किस तरह से किसी भी पॉलिसी का इम्पैक्ट एनालिसिस करते हैं। इसके ऊपर एक काफ़ी सारा लिटरेचर है। अनफॉर्चुनेटली हम लोगों को ज़रूरत होती है कि इमीडिएटली पॉलिसी के 3 महीने बाद और 6 महीने बाद बताएं कि क्या हुआ, और वो स्टेटिस्टिकली रोबस्ट नहीं होता। तो मैं इधर चीफ स्टेटिस्टिशियन की हैसियत में बोल रहा हूँ, तो मैं आपको बोलूँगा कि स्टेटिस्टिकली क्या रोबस्ट है। बाकी लोग अपने एनालिटिकल तरीके से मॉडलिंग की तरफ से कई तरह से बोलते हैं, उस पर मैं अभी टिप्पणी नहीं करूँगा।
So, I thank the Secretary, Dr. Anant ji, and his colleagues, and thank you, friends. Please join us for refreshment on 4th floor.